Well, the unmistakable sounds of the NBA on NBC. And tonight we look forward to not only the Sixers and the Spurs, which means Wemby in town, but the NBA and NBC with the Throwback broadcast, going back to the 1990s, bringing back a lot of the notables that entertained us, not only that decade, but others as well. As tonight, Bob Costas, Mike Fratello, Doug Collins, Hannah Storm, Jim Gray, PJ Carlissimo, and others will all be part of the broadcast. It's going to be great, not just here locally, but of course across the entire nation. Bob Costas is going to join us in just a moment. Now, John, let's take a trip back here to 1998, because unfortunately the 90s were not exactly the greatest Sixers decade. James, we don't have a Sixers highlight from the 90s, right?
Not any good ones.
Just want to make sure no Clarence Weatherspoon or Sharon Wright or Sean Bradley. Right. Well, AI was drafted, but obviously the star of stars in the 1990s was Michael Jordan, and Michael, at the end of his Bulls tenure, had about the greatest final 30 seconds anyone could have, as Bob Costas in 1998 called.
Jordan with 43. Malone is doubled. They swat at it and steal it. Here comes Chicago. 17 seconds. 17 seconds from Game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan open. Chicago with the lead. Timeout, Utah. 5.2 seconds left. Michael Jordan running on fumes with 45 points.
An unbelievable moment in sports history. Of course, as called by Bob Costas, he has called so many of them, and he joins our program, Joe DeCamara and John Ritchie here on WIP for the first time, the legendary Bob Costas. Bob, good morning, sir. How are you?
Hi, Joe. Hi, John. How you doing?
Good morning.
We are fantastic. We're excited. I think this is great. You guys are leaning into this tonight, and I imagine you're excited to rev this up again.
Yeah, absolutely. One name you left out, Isaiah Thomas will be with us as well tonight.
Good.
Wow.
But for a variety of circumstances, Marv Albert is not, Ahmad Rashad is not, and Dr. J is not. And they all wanted to be part of it, and we may do this again down the road.
Good.
And
awesome.
include them and others. You know, Tom Hammond is in his early 80s now and in retirement in Kentucky, but he was as good a broadcaster. You don't even want to say a number 2 guy, but there was Dick Enberg and there was Marv Albert and others at NBC at that time. So he was kind of the second guy, but what a great broadcaster he was on football, on basketball, on figure skating and track and field at the Olympics. And he called so many great NBA moments with Bill Walton and Steve Jones. And of course, Snapper and Walton have passed away, as have Dick Enberg and Greg Gumbel, others that were involved in the NBA on NBC. So we're not saying it's everybody who deserves a nod. They'll all get a nod during the course of the broadcast. We'll acknowledge them. There'll be flashbacks and photos and little video vignettes that'll try to get a nod to everybody who was part of one of the great eras in the history of sports, really. That whole run that we were lucky enough to be part of was unforgettable.
Absolutely. And Bob Costas here with us. You know, Bob, I was thinking earlier about you in Philadelphia, and maybe it just relates to, you know, the heyday of you on NBC didn't coincide with some of Philadelphia teams being that great. And I'm curious, what are your main memories of games you've called in Philly? Because, you know, when you were calling the World Series, the Phils weren't in it.
Right.
What are your main Philadelphia sports memories that you've called?
You know, this is an interesting question. I should have come prepared. Nothing occurs to me off the top of my head, because either the Philadelphia teams in the sports that NBC did have didn't do that much, or those that did weren't on NBC.
Right.
For example, sports-wise, I started at NBC in the 80s. We had the AFC. And, of course, the Eagles are in the NFC. So we never had any of their playoff games, never had anything memorable that I can think of that I was directly involved in. The Phillies had a tremendous team in the 70s and into the early 80s, the Mike Schmidt, Steve Carlton, Philadelphia teams. I didn't start doing the game of the week on NBC until the early 80s, and I don't recall any Philly games that were, you know, incredible. I recall coming into Philadelphia doing games at Veterans Stadium and lamenting on the air, what are these cookie-cutter ballparks? I don't know if I'm in Philadelphia, Cincinnati, St. Louis, or Pittsburgh. They're all the same ballpark.
Yep.
But that's not a great highlight. I was never part of the NHL coverage, so there's no Flyer stuff in there.
Yeah.
I apologize. And the Sixers, like you said, the Sixers weren't great in the 90s. Now, I was an ABA guy in the 70s, so I saw the ABA career of Dr. J when I was the voice of the Spirits of St. Louis, and Doc and I remained close after that, and we worked together on the NBA and NBC in the 90s.
Wow.
But I cannot pick out a specific game, I'm sad to say.
Bob, Jordan or LeBron?
You want the long answer or the short answer?
Both. The consolidated long.
Okay. The short answer is Jordan. The long answer is here's why. You can make a statistical case for LeBron, who is one of the greatest players in the history of the league, no question. That's why he's in the discussion. And the longevity gives him a leg up in that respect, cumulatively. And he does have more assists than Michael Jordan had. However, the impact, if you want to make a case that, that LeBron is equally excellent, go ahead and it might be a good case. But you can't make a case that he's equally great because Jordan's impact was so much greater on the popularity of the league, on the marketing of the league, but also the individual moments. Does LeBron have moments? Of course he does. But Jordan has so many of them, you'd have to cut the list off just out of exhaustion.
Right. Yeah,
that begins with the shot that beat Georgetown when he was a freshman, I think, at North Carolina.
Yep.
He's the key figure in the first and true dream team. Every single guy was a star, but he's the key figure. He's the center of it. 6 for 6 in the finals, and he's the MVP every time.
Yeah.
Led the league in scoring 10 straight years. And it seems, he famously had one of his Nike commercials was, here's the number of shots I've missed. But because I've missed these game-ending shots, I'm not afraid to take them. That's why I made this many. Sure, of course. It's crazy to say he always came through in every clutch moment. But it damn sure seemed that way. And one of the things that separates Michael, and it's just his good fortune and NBC's good fortune, his entire career played out either at the beginning.
Oh, his phone just zapped.
Oh, no. I'll call him back.
Get him back.
Horrible timing.
Get him back. That was
Oh, no.
we're right there. Right there. Ben, that's I don't know what's the comp in baseball. A guy's
Right
about to
at the
pitch a no-hitter and
Yeah.
then you get sick?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only comp I can think of. We were right at the precipice. We were right there. We were so close.
That's funny. And I see James talking to him here, so we'll get him back in just 1 second. I guess, Bob's getting ready, of course, to announce this game, which is later tonight on NBC, and we've been talking about today and having some fun with some 1990s memories, of which there are quite a bit. All right, let's talk to one of the great announcers of all time. He was on the show about 10 minutes ago, and his phone zapped out, and Bob Costas is back with us. Bob, hello again.
Guys, this is the way it goes. We had the whole crew last night. Hannah Storm, Isaiah, Doug Collins, et cetera, et cetera. Couple of glasses of wine maybe at Giuseppe and Sons. Terrific spot. Give them a pop. Anyway, I didn't realize my phone was barely charged. I slept late. I woke up like 10 minutes before your producer called me, right? And here I am in the middle of this soliloquy about Jordan and LeBron, and I realized that for the last half of it, I'm talking to myself. Like a crazy guy on a podcast.
We're sorry about that, Bob.
So good, Bob.
Why should you be sorry? It's my bad.
Well, thank you.
So good, so good. So, all right, Bob, a lot to discuss here. And again, the NBA on NBC tonight, and we appreciate you being back on the program. And tonight's going to be a big extravaganza of, 90s memories, but also the modern day basketball. Bob, unfortunately, with things I wrote down to discuss with you, a lot of them are how to fix ... and then different topics. So let's take on the NBA regular season. What would be the Bob Costas solution to get players to play, to get players to care, to get fans to care again? How do you fix the NBA regular season?
I think you could fix it by making it shorter. That's been talked about in baseball as well. it's going to cost some revenue unless they figure out some other structure that could compensate. But a shorter schedule with more breathing room within that schedule would help. And then there has to be a mindset change. I think that everyone in the league has to understand, and Adam Silver's probably working on this behind the scenes, everyone in the league has to understand. For example, if Wemby sat out tonight, this is the only time that the Spurs come in during the regular season. Teams from the other conference play once in your city. What if you're expecting to see that player and they either play 10 minutes or they don't play at all? That's a bad look for the league. We know the problem. I know the problem as well as you do. I don't really have a solution at this point, but it involves either easing the schedule in some way, creating more space in it, reducing it by a few games so that there's breathing room, but also a change in mindset. A lot of this also has to do with analytics. And anytime anyone criticizes analytics, it's like, oh, this is get off my lawn. Analytics have changed all sports, and they're essential for building a team, for creating an approach to how you play. But if analytics says that over the course of a season, if this guy plays only this much, he'll be better for the playoffs or whatever it might be, the product is diminished as a result. So, it's hard to talk front offices and coaches out of what they believe to be a winning strategy. It's hard to say to them, look, we want this marquee player to be on the floor as much as possible, especially in road games, as it turns out. Yeah, but it's a long season and we're pointing toward the playoffs. How do you reconcile those different objectives? I don't know.
We're lamenting Joel Embiid's struggles with his health. How likely is it that he wins an NBA championship in his career, Bob?
Well, he's on a good but not great team now. There's a phrase in sports that you hear a lot. The best ability is availability.
Yeah.
You look at the Sixers now, Paul George and Embiid, between them, have 16 All-Star appearances. But tonight, they're not available. Yeah. And George isn't available until the end of this month because of the suspension. What that means when the playoffs loom and the team gets back together, and you assume, fingers crossed, they have their two best players at that point, their absence affects everybody else and how you play. There's a domino effect. Embiid is 31 years old?
He's right around
30.
there. You might be right, but it's somewhere
right.
in there.
In that vicinity.
Yeah.
And George is in his mid-30s.
Yep.
And
31.
The Pistons and the Celtics, even without Jason Tatum, and now the Knicks are formidable in the East. The Cavs as well. It's hard to pin them as a team that's likely to get to the conference finals or the finals this year, even with George and Embiid. And in sports, the clock ticks. You hit your 30s, you're into advanced athletic age. You can hope. They're not a hopeless team, but I certainly wouldn't put them among the favorites. Talking to Doug Collins last night, he reminded me when he joined the Sixers and he played all 8 of his career, eight seasons of his career in Philadelphia before injuries kind of ended it. He was the number 1 pick out of Illinois State in the entire draft. He joined a team that the year before had been 9-73.
That's right.
Still the worst record for an 82-game season in basketball history. Yeah,
that is the absolute depth.
Correct.
But it wasn't that long before the leagues merged and Dr. J came to that team, and eventually Moses Malone came to that team from the ABA, and Bobby Jones was a very good player, and George McGinnis. And they went to the finals several times.
Yep, that's exactly right. So Bob, the baseball thing, and the unmistakable voice of Bob Costas here with us right now. Bob, the economics of baseball. So here in Philly, people are excited the Phillies have a high payroll. Now, there's frustration that they haven't won a World Series with this group, but obviously they're a very good team. The Dodgers spent all this money. Phillies have a shot. The Pirates, the Royals, some of these teams have essentially no shot. What is the solution to the economic imbalance in baseball? I would not like to see a salary cap brought in, but it could be. What do you think happens here? What's the solution?
Or some version of a salary cap, some mechanism that isn't specifically called a salary cap, because that's a holy war line in the sand for the Players Association going all the way back to Marvin Miller, but some sort of mechanism that restores not just some sort of reasonable, not competitive balance. That doesn't mean, 30 different teams win the World Series for 30 consecutive years or everybody's a contender every year, but that every team feels like not only does it have a reasonable chance to be good, but a reasonable chance to hold the core of their team together for fan engagement. Milwaukee won more games than any team in baseball last year, 97. That's the smallest market out of the 30. But could they keep Freddie Peralta? No. He's the Mets opening day starting pitcher. If Milwaukee or Kansas City has the next Shohei Ohtani, I take those words back, there won't be a next Shohei Ohtani. They have the next, let's say, Aaron Judge or Mike Trout. They can't keep them. It's kind of an anomaly that Mike Trout wanted, for whatever reason, to stay with the Angels. Phillies fans wish he would have wanted to come home and come to Philadelphia. So you need some kind of mechanism that restores some sort of order, but at the same time doesn't really serve just as a way to further enrich owners and take money away from players. I don't have a degree in economics or business, but there must be a way to approach this instead of as a holy war or a war of high principle, because the players have won all the battles based on principle. This is just a tough, hard-nosed business deal. And can we sit down, recognize our mutual interests, and pound out that deal? One thing that does help, though, is that there are two central divisions. So Milwaukee is competing. A third of their games are played with other teams in the same division. Same thing in the American League. So Kansas City was recently in the playoffs. Didn't make it last year, but did the year before. Cleveland has a consistently contending team. There's no team, with the exception of the Cubs, out of the 10 Central Division teams in baseball, no team that's in the top half of Major League payrolls except for the Cubs as of last year. There's that. Then you have 3 wild cards. So if you win 85, 86 games, you can get in. And when people think it's inevitable that the Dodgers or Yankees are always going to go to the World Series, the Dodgers did win it the last 2 years. In 2024, they're down 2-1 in the division series to the Padres from their own division. The year before that, they get swept in the division series by the Diamondbacks that they finished 16 games ahead of. And the year before that, they lose in 4 to the Padres, who they finished 22 games ahead of. Once you get into baseball's postseason in the modern era, nothing is guaranteed for any team.
Yeah. Bob, so much has changed during your broadcasting career. How has the social media aspect influenced the way fans consume your broadcasting, and how much do you pay attention to the positivity or the negativity that can be generated there?
Leave me out of it. I think there's already academic studies that show that people who are angry and in many cases ignorant are disproportionately represented in social media.
Wow.
That doesn't mean that there aren't insightful comments and valid comments. But on the internet, by and large, there are no misdemeanors, only felonies. Everybody's guilty of a felony if they had a misstatement or whatever it might be. And I caught a little bit of it. I don't pay too much attention to it, but I'm generally aware. I caught a little bit of it toward the end when I did the baseball games on TBS. But quite honestly, some of that, not the worst of it, not the vitriol, but the observation that I wasn't as good as I once had been, that was accurate. That was fair. And if somebody said that, if somebody said, Bob was really good on the game of the week in the 90s and really good in the early days of the baseball network, and he's still good in the studio or doing essays or whatever, but he lost a bit on his fastball when it came to baseball play-by-play, that's a fair comment, whether it's made on your show or whether it's made on social media. But if somebody decides, because they're 23 years old and have no frame of reference, Costas sucks, I think you, as a sane human being, you pay as much attention to that as someone ranting on a park bench.
Sure.
Listen, Bob, I'm with you 1,000,000%. Before we go any further, let me say this. Thank you for all you've done for sports, because I just want you to know, as someone who's 47 years old, loves sports as I do, I have great appreciation for what you have done.
Thank you.
I truly, truly do. Bob, let's talk about the media aspect. We sort of touched on it briefly there with social media, but so I remember hearing you and Al Michaels talk in the past about how, Howard Cosell wasn't exactly warm and fuzzy to the two of you as you were coming up. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's an evolution. Howard probably felt a certain degree of threatened and thought maybe you weren't, quite his style. And so, there's Stephen A., there's Pat McAfee, there's another evolution of style. What are your thoughts as new styles develop, how you, as an elder statesman that has done it and at the highest level, how do you feel about how the sports media landscape has evolved?
Well, one thing we had to keep in mind is there's more platforms. So Stephen A. and Pat McAfee and others aren't doing what they're doing on network TV. Mike Tirico, who's having his moment now, people are celebrating him as they should. He's a tremendous all-around broadcaster, and he back-to-back excelled on the Super Bowl and then on the Olympics. He has much more in common with me or Al Michaels or Jim Nance or whomever you want to mention in past generations, much more in common than he does with some of the other people you might cite who are notable today, but what they're doing is not really presenting games, or they're not contiguous to games like I used to be as the host of the Olympics or the NBA or whatever it might be. So I think that classic sports broadcasting, with some changes, you have to be more aware of the analytics now, and there's certain differences in presentation, but the core of it is still the same. What Mike did at the end of the Olympics and after the hockey game, that's what I did at the Olympics. And that's how I would have done it, with little variations, because all of us are different in our sensibilities and our approach, but essentially the same. A lot of overlap there. So luckily for me, at this point, I'm in an emeritus role. And so I don't have to worry about, is what I'm doing appealing to this segment of the demographic or that segment? I'll just do what I've always done, and it seems like there's still a substantial number of people that appreciate that, at least in small doses. As I put it now, I'm a show pony. The workhorse is Tirico. I'm the show pony.
Bob, with Doug Collins and Mike Fratello and others on the call tonight, Sixers and Spurs, NBA on NBC. Bob, a couple final ones here. This is going to be the hardest to answer of all, because no one seems to have the answer. The fix for college sports. I mean, I don't even know where you begin, but where do you begin? How do you try to make it better?
The thing is so transactional now that you have to have complete willing suspension of disbelief to even engage. Like, oh, this is my alma mater. I really care about it. It used to be kind of a sham before. Now it's a complete unmitigated sham. I've said about some of these coaches who have opted out, they could live with the corruption. They just couldn't live with the chaos between the transfer portal and the complete cynicism. Some players even gauging their NBA or NFL possibilities and saying, no, I'll stay in school. I'll be a sixth-year graduate student, even though I may be borderline illiterate. I'll stay in school because I can make more money here than I'm likely to make in the pros. And yet you're supposed to, wear your school colors and wave your pom-poms for this. It's become pretty cynical and pretty transactional. And again, I don't have the expertise to know exactly what the mechanism is, but what I keep hearing is the only way is for Congress to step in, and then people immediately roll their eyes because Congress, they think, messes everything up, and there's evidence to that effect. But if Congress were to step in and create some kind of possibility where there would not be antitrust problems with it, where you take that away, you wouldn't be sued all the time. Here's the structure that will help college sports impose, and then perhaps some of that chaos could be tamped down. But the genie is never going to go completely back into the bottle. You're never going to have people like, I spent 4 years here, and now it's my senior year, and everybody on campus knows who I am, and they see me strolling to class. That was an ideal back in the day, and it's all but gone.
Yeah. So, Bob, two final things here on the baseball front. So one is, sitting with us right now is our buddy Ben Davis, second overall pick of the San Diego Padres. And we were talking earlier, if you would nail the one thing that we think Ben is most well known for in his baseball career, perhaps other than being the second overall pick, does one thing come to mind for you when you think of Ben Davis?
If you'd asked me about Willie Davis or Tommy Davis, I have a better answer.
I told you he would know who I am.
No offense to Ben.
All right, so Bob, Ben is the guy.
I feel bad now.
No, it's okay. Ben is the guy who laid down the bunt against Schilling when Schilling had the no-hitter going about 20 years ago. You might remember Schilling. Ben, was it the 8th inning?
7th inning. It was a perfect game.
Perfect game. Mm-hmm. And Ben lays down a successful bunt And Schilling and about 3/4 of America were not happy with Ben that day. So.
Well, there is a code in baseball, and Ben violated that code in that moment. And if you're asking me to be his defense attorney, I might just opt for a settlement. I don't know if I can completely get him off the hook. Maybe I can mitigate the sentence.
Yes.
Well, it was 2-0.
Yeah, well, his argument was because it was 2-0, he's still trying to win the game. It's not just about the,
Get on base, and now the tying run comes to the plate.
Exactly. All right, so, Bob, all jokes aside, let's wrap on the Phillies here. So we've had a heck of a tug-of-war in the last couple months. Our show, our town. I'm much higher on the Phillies than many because I cite things like you did, how the Dodgers lost in their first playoff series a couple times before, winning the last two. Obviously, they've won 3 of the last, I think it's 6. I just think the expansion of the playoffs has made it such that fans that are going to have their team in the playoffs frequently better saddle up for having your heart broken an awful lot over and over and over again in October. Yet people tell me, you know what, the heck with the Phillies, they're blowing it. Where do you come down on the quality of the Phillies and how fans should see what baseball now is?
Fans always think that their team lost rather than the other team won. They always see it through that prism. And by the way, fans listening to every network broadcaster, you realize every network broadcaster hates every team. Joe Buck hates every team in the NFL. Every team. I've hated both teams in every series I've ever done in any sport. Both teams. I just hate them. I'm just oozing venom for both sides, depending upon which city you're sitting in while you're listening to it. But, the division series against the Dodgers ended in crushing fashion. But if it doesn't, they're right in that game. That would have made the series 2-2, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and then you play a 5th game, right?
Yep.
And you play that 5th game in Philadelphia. Because people forget, the Dodgers kind of slow-walked their team trying to get it ready for October. They didn't win their usual 100-plus games. They won 93. They had to play in the wild card round. They had to play Cincinnati, admittedly at home, but that's a 2 out of 3 roll of the dice. So if that game doesn't end in the bizarre fashion it did, maybe the Phillies win that game.
Yep.
Maybe they come back and play a Game 5 at home. And then Dodger fans are complaining, yeah, we won the World Series last year, but all we do is have good regular seasons, and then we choke, and Dave Roberts isn't that great. That's just the way this stuff goes. But if the Phillies pitching is healthy, if you got Wheeler and Nola at the top of the rotation, you get into the postseason, and you got a healthy, you got Schwarber in the lineup, you got Harper in the lineup. That's a team that is capable of getting to the World Series. But to the premise of your question, is it guaranteed or even close to 50-50? If you said to me, hypothetically, you could have any team in baseball history, pick any team you think is the best team in baseball history, and then at the start of the season, pick them to win the World Series, and the other half of the bet is you've got the field. You got everybody else. I'd take everybody else just because of the nature of it. It's not like the old straight pennant race or even when it was 2 divisions and you just finished first in your division, played at LCS, and went to the World Series. Now it's just a complete crapshoot.
No question. Riga, you and I have been at each other's throats for 4 months on this one, and I guess it'll continue for years.
It will not change at all.
All right, Bob, let me say thank you again, not only for joining the program, but all you've done through the years. A real treat having you on the program today. And we wish you and Doug and Mike Fratello and the whole group, NBA and NBC, a great 90s throwback broadcast. We'll be watching tonight, and good luck with that, Bob.
Should be fun. Thank you, guys. And right now I'm retreating to Baseball Reference to familiarize myself with the entirety of Ben Davis's career.
All right, Bob, stay well.
Bob.
Good luck tonight. Thank you, sir.
Guys.